Hi, everyone. I'm Devin Copley. I'm the CEO of AMIV. We make AVATOUR, the remote presence platform. And the problem that AVATOUR solves for construction professionals and others is quite simple. Basically, a video conference like the one that maybe you're participating in now is a good substitute for the kinds of meetings that happen in conference rooms. But a lot of meetings don't happen in conference rooms, especially in the construction, architecture, engineering space. Whether that's a site inspection, whether it's site-specific training, or even some kinds of marketing or location scoping, location scouting. These kinds of meetings, which are frequent in your industry, requires physical presence, requires that context that gives you the ability to sort of point at something and say, hey, that's where something is, that's what needs to be done, this is where the HVAC goes, this is how the light falls, the kinds of things you do if you're in a physical location. Waving a phone around is a really bad way of communicating a space. Video conferencing is good for faces, bad for spaces. And there wasn't any tool that was designed to allow you to have those sort of location-specific meetings remotely until now. This is what AVATOUR is about. AVATOUR provides a location-immersed communication platform. We allow you to have video conferencing with context. We're using recently available off-the-shelf hardware, a 360 camera of the same kind that you might be familiar with from HoloBuilder or Struction Site, as well as a smartphone. And with just that, you're able to capture a site in real time and allow remote users to visit it and to be able to speak to the people there and see complete 360-degree context. Now, we're big fans of the VR goggles. A lot of our customers use VR. Some of them don't. That's fine. You don't have to use VR. You can connect with a browser on any device. Either way, you can have that video conference and have the full surrounding at the same time. So this is kind of a shorthand for how it works. The person who's on site is who we call the host, and they have basically a 360 camera and a cell phone on a selfie stick, just like I have here. The phone runs our app, and it connects over LTE or over Wi-Fi. And we can help with connectivity solutions. Obviously, that's a challenge in some sites, but we have some experience working with our clients to solve that problem. In any case, for the host, it's very similar to a standard video conference. They can see the remote users appear on their screen. And the only difference really is they've got this little 360 camera on top of their phone. For the remote users, though, it's quite different. So you can join either with a web browser on any device or with a VR headset. If you join in a web browser, this is what the experience is like. You have sort of a screen that's similar to Zoom, except you can click and drag, and you can look anywhere in the space in real time while you're talking to the on-site personnel. Obviously, this is quite helpful when you're talking about a space. Each individual visitor or guest can look in different directions. Everybody who joins the session can be looking a different way, and then they can be exploring the space however they want. Now, if you use the VR headset, it's quite a more profound experience. And I'm actually going to just switch to a bigger video to show you that. So what we're going to see here is a construction supervisor or foreman who's on site and has run into an issue. And normally, to be able to deal with this issue, he'd have to take some photos, send some emails, maybe have a phone call, pour over the photos. It might slow down things, it might hold up construction for a day or more. In this case, he's using AVATOUR to bring the sponsor and the architect to the site to show the issue that he's experiencing and get their buy-in on his proposed solution so he can move forward immediately. So what you'll see here is shot from inside a headset just like this one. So this is an inexpensive $250 VR headset. And this is recorded from the point of view of one of the users wearing that headset. And there are two other users also in the headset. And they can all see each other as avatars, and they can all, as these sort of cartoon people, and they can all talk to the foreman on site and resolve the problem very quickly. So let's just listen in on that conversation, which I think illustrates the power of the AVATOUR platform.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I do.
All right. Yeah, so I'm going to measure out 42 inches so you can see it here.
Wow, that's that would come up quite a ways into the towards the middle of that lower pane.
Yeah. So go up pretty high there. You know, obviously that's something that I would think you wouldn't like. So
hopefully this gives you an idea of how that presence, that ability to sort of look around the space and see the space, makes it possible to solve problems very quickly rather than having to go through a long process. That's the main benefit. I think even in the pre-COVID era, travel on site is expensive, it's time consuming, and schedule compression is always an issue. And if you can get things done quicker without having to have people show up, then that delivers a lot of value both for the contractor and for the client. But obviously now, at a time when it's difficult or impossible sometimes to travel to the actual construction site, AVATOUR provides even more value than in the past. We've been in business for about 2.5 years now. AVATOUR is our second product. It launched in September of last year in beta and in general availability just in March of this year. We're working with a number of construction teams and construction clients, including DPR construction, with a couple of different groups there. We work with GAPS, the retail company Gap, their internal architecture and construction team, with Apple, their internal architecture team, and we're in conversations with a number of GCs around the country. So I think that functions as a pretty good introduction. Carl, Stephen, what else can I tell you?
Yeah, so it's just so that I understand this. So the host, the person that will be having the 360-degree camera on site, if I were to call into that, I would have control over kind of where I would look as he or she walks to the building or walks to the space. I can kind of just look in the directions I want to be looking at the same time as he's hosting the conference call.
Exactly. And we are working on the ability to actually record that session at the same time, so you have that as a reference point. But already you have the ability to take still images or 360 images during the session. So in the same way that something like a construction site allows you to do this sort of offline scan, we can make that possible live, so that as the person on site is walking through, you can grab those images, you can even annotate those images, and then push them to Procore or Bluebeam or whatever as a way to document the decisions that you make during the meeting and give you action items to follow up on.
Got it. And then
sorry, Carl. There aren't any particular hardware requirements on the participant side. It's really just a link and being able to use a browser to interact with the meeting.
Yeah, that's right. It's very similar to joining, a Zoom or a Google Meet when you don't use the app and you just use it in the browser. It's just like that. You can get an invitation with a start time, and you click on the link, and there you go.
Fantastic.
And then, in order to host the meeting, I would need a 360-degree camera. What other equipment would I have?
Yeah, so the typical kit. So we can make it easy for our customers. We have a program where we'll put together a Peli case with everything you need that's turnkey. So you can literally ship it to a job site and be up and running within minutes. And we'll provide a quick onboarding, train whoever's going to use it. But it's really quite straightforward. It's not rocket science. The specific hardware requirements are a smartphone. Currently, we support Android. The iOS support is coming out later this month, so very shortly we'll have Apple support as well. The 360 phone, we generally ship it with this sort of convertible sort of selfie stick / tripod, which allows you to sort of walk around with it easily, or sort of extend it and place it down on the floor or on a surface to be hands-free. We generally would suggest the use of a Bluetooth headset as well. We typically ship that in our kits. And for job sites, you can get headsets that clip onto a hard hat, or we often use these bone conduction headsets that wrap around the back of the head and go very well with a hard hat.
This is not an important question, but for the participants who show up in the video, are those avatars self-created, or are they just kind of randomly assigned?
No, you can choose your avatar, and you have some ability to customize it to either look exactly like you or look nothing like you. You have that option either way. My co-founder likes to have a parrot perching on his shoulder, which is he dresses like a pirate for his
Fantastic.
And so if there's somebody that's interested in maybe just trying out this product, is there even a capability for them to rent or lease this equipment? Just say, hey, for a week or two or for a month, I want to get access to it, but I don't know if I want to make that financial commitment to buying the hardware. Is there a way for them to?
Of course, yeah. We provide trial options that are 60 days or less, and we can also provide leased hardware. So you can actually buy the solution on a monthly basis with leased hardware that we provide. So we try to make it as easy as possible and turnkey with the hardware. We can even provide it with bundled LTE service, at least in the United States, so that you get the kit, you turn it on, it's already connected, and it's ready to go. Now, as I mentioned, connectivity is important. And if you're in a job site that's say a mine or a power plant that's out in the middle of nowhere, then connectivity is something we might have to work together to solve. But generally in urban areas where there's good cell service, we can solve that problem pretty readily.
From an implementation standpoint, Devin, are you normally seeing a GC or whoever you're working with have one kit and it's kind of handed off between people who are interacting with this, or do you have different teams that have a kit per? How does the implementation look like from a hardware standpoint?
I mean, we're still learning from that, learning about that, to be honest. I think it's relatively easy to ship a kit around within a country. Crossing borders tends to be problematic. So we do see people, shipping kits around, or both of the things that you mentioned. I'd say there's three common techniques, right? One is to just have a kit permanently at a location, and there may be multiple teams that use the kit as they need it. The second is to have one kit that gets sort of shipped around, among teams or among locations. And then the third approach is to have a kit that's assigned to a team, and the team may move from one location to another, and they would use it all the time. So those are the various options. And it's worth mentioning that our license model does not license specifically to the hardware. It's a user-based license. So we have some firms are using it specifically around inspection and compliance, safety inspections, those sorts of things. In that case, they might have a single license, but multiple hardware kits. So they might have a kit at each site, but it's only one central safety inspection team who's using that kit once a week on each site or whatever.
It's interesting. Yeah, I could see certain phases of the job really need this kind of technology. From even a safety standpoint, when you're talking a high rise, there's certain steel details that need various continuous eyes on them, but because of the stage of the project, access is an issue. So I think it's a really interesting technology.
Well, thanks.
Are there any integrations that you guys offer that makes this compatible with other construction products?
Not yet. You know, as I said, we make it possible to sort of export files in standard format, JPEG, these sorts of things that you can pull into a Procore or a Bluebeam. But we are very interested in making that easier. It's the kind of thing that we're having ongoing conversations with our construction customers about, and you know, you can expect over time we'll be, you know, providing tighter integrations with those backends.
With some of the implementations that you have ongoing with DPR or with the owners that you referenced, have they been able to communicate kind of an ROI story of any variety?
I don't have any specific numbers to share. I mean, I think the nature of ROI has changed pretty dramatically in the last few months. And, you know, what we're seeing is, rather than the sort of calculation of, you know, how much travel we've saved or how many days of schedule have been, you know, saved, we're having people say, look, we have no other way of accomplishing this task, you know, whatever it is, right? Maybe the architects are overseas. And so, you know, to have their review, it's literally impossible to get them physically on the site. And so I think that ROI is kind of infinite, I suppose.
One thing our customer at Gap, when they were using our product, they brought up the fact that if we're able to reduce one business trip, it pays for itself. The average business trip costs between $1,200 and $1,400. And so with a massive team and sending people out on job sites and checking different things, if you can reduce 5 to 7 of those, it really does pay for itself.
Yeah, that's a great
point. I can imagine, especially in light of even kind of where we're at with COVID. I'm sure there's been an increased desire and demand. So, and that just lends right to your point that, I mean, as companies are more perhaps looking for alternative ways to visit the job site, that this provides a really good solution. I'm curious to know if maybe you can talk a little bit about, you know, it seems like this is a great product for not only teams within a company, but also different companies interfacing with each other, such as a design office dealing with the GC, right? So what type of interactions or application are you seeing between not only just, you know, in-house as one GC, but then also between different companies?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think being able to get the client and the architect on site, you know, both, you know, with less fuss and potentially, you know, more often, is, you know, a way to avoid, you know, stopping work and avoiding the safety implications of having, you know, having those folks around the job site. That's very helpful. But I think it's not even just about the, you know, the architects, the sponsors. It's also sort of down the chain to the subs, where, you know, you might have junior personnel from a sub who are on site, and, you know, there's some sort of existing condition they need to deal with, and they need an approval or buy-in from their boss. And, you know, potentially you can make that happen more quickly, and give that sub the confidence that they can move forward with a recommendation without having to be on site. And then we're working with Hilti. So even with sort of, you know, manufacturers of components, you know, one of the use cases that Hilti is exploring is around the certification of installation of components like anchor bolts, where there's a third party who needs to sort of attend the installation and validate that it's been accomplished according to best practices and according to the manufacturer specifications, et cetera. and they're experimenting. This is not something that's been approved yet, but they're experimenting with the idea of enabling that to happen using AVATOUR. So I think the opportunities, as you say, to like make those interactions with all the other orgs that are involved with a project, make those more efficient. There's a lot of opportunity there.
Where does the name AVATOUR come from? I asked all the important questions, as you can tell.
Yeah. So the avatar, as I mentioned, is that cartoon person that you show up as, and the idea that you can go on a tour of the job site. It just seemed like a nice way to add those two words together and something reasonably memorable.
Very cool.
Well, that wraps up all the questions that I have. Steve, did you have anything additional?